So to get started, first, I want to introduce myself for those of you who don't know who I am. My name is Tony Ricketts. I am the founder and CEO of Lawnline Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency that focuses specifically on the lawn and landscape industry. More specifically, we focus on those companies that are at the $1 million range and above. So we have a lot of insights and knowledge working with all these various companies. Now, I also have a special guest here with me today. Today, we have Jeffrey Scott, who is also an expert in this industry. And I won't speak for him, so I'll let Jeffrey, if you don't mind, just take a minute, tell the people who you are, what you do, and why they should listen to what you have to say.
Thank you, Tony, so much. Really appreciate you having me on to this December webinar. As I just said before, my favorites. I am a consultant specialized in the landscape industry. I have worked with approximately 315 separate companies. I've just signed 2 more up that I'll be consulting with at the beginning of the year, so that number goes up. I've been doing that since before 2008. Before that, I ran a landscape company. I was co-owner and ran and grew a landscape company, so hands-on, totally understand it. And before that, I did actually corporate consulting. I earned my MBA and did international corporate consulting. And so I have some experience in the real world, so to speak, the big corporate world. And before that, I grew up in the landscape world. So really since the age of 7 in the landscape business. Tony, that makes it 5 decades in total. It's kind of scary to say that, but that's my experience. And I just love this industry. I love working with entrepreneurs. That's why I got out of corporate consulting and all that boring stuff. And that's what brings me here today.
Absolutely. Well, the way I translate that is if there is anybody in this industry that has the insights and the knowledge to guide landscape companies on how they should be structuring and running their business, and more importantly, what makes it valuable, you are definitely the man to do that. So I'm glad that you've joined me here again this year. If you guys were not here last year, Jeffrey and I did a webinar last year as well that was more focused on the marketing side. This year, we're shifting to focus on the operational side and building that value. So what I want to talk about here is, on this webinar, we're really going to focus on the benefits of owning a business, right? And to where it's not going to be a drag on you, to where it actually builds value, where it's not just a job or a hobby anymore, where it's actually turning into a real corporation that's self-sustaining. And by self-sustaining means many different things. So to start off, the name of the webinar here is Transforming Your Landscape Company into a Valuable Turnkey Business. So Jeffrey, if you don't mind, let's hear from you on what that means to build a valuable turnkey landscape business.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So there are 3 kinds of value. There's cash flow, like as if you're getting dividends from a stock you held. There's a business that works without you, and which gives you the value of freedom. And then there's resale. Can I take this asset and sell it for a big chunk of money? So that's 3 different ways to define value. And there's 3 different ways to define turnkey. One is with you as an investor in the business, in your own business, and it's just totally working without you. The second definition is where you're the owner, CEO, you're really working on the business, over the business, and everyone else is working in the business. Or a turnkey business, but where you play an active part as a manager in that business in a key role. And so what I want to do today is I've sort of broken it up into 4 parts that I want to touch on today, taking all those different types of value and outlining it in 4 different sections. So the first thing I want to touch on is how to throw off more cash, how to create more cash flow. The second thing I want to touch on is how to get a business to work without you. The third thing I want to touch on is how to grow the resale value of your business. And the fourth thing I want to touch on is how to grow your discretionary time, which is actually a little different from having the business work without you. So I'm going to touch on that really from 2 different angles. So we're going to start off with throwing off cash flow and profits. Number 2, getting the business to work without you. Number 3, growing the business and resale value. And number 4, growing your discretionary time.
Well, those are all very important aspects, obviously, to be able to grow a business that's valuable and turn it into the turnkey business. I mean, let's be honest, everybody here is a executive or owner of their business, and you don't want to be chained to your business. And these 4 aspects are really what business owners and entrepreneurs need to master in order to not be chained to their business. So if you don't mind, then let's start with the first one, Jeff. The one that that we all want to know about is how to throw off the cash flow. Why don't you dive into that for us?
Sure. Thank you. So, by the way, a way to create cash flow in general, its general definition is have high profits and lower capital investments. So some companies make high profits, but then they have to invest all of it back in the business. And if you have to keep doing that, then you don't get a lot of free cash flow for yourself. And so the ideal business is high profits, but low or medium or managed capital investment. And so, I mean, this is a short webinar here. I'm going to touch on some ways to throw up the higher profit, because the lower capital investment has more to do with, that'd really be a whole separate webinar on the types of niches you want to choose and capital structure. But getting a high profit is really a lot of where it starts and stops. If you can't do that, you have nothing else. So I'm going to do a little work on my flip chart here. Let me know if you can still hear me when I'm standing back here and you can see it.
Still got you.
Still got me. All right. So in the past, you've heard me talk about the profit pyramid, right? Tony, you've probably heard me say that many times.
A couple of times, but it never gets old.
It never gets old. And this is the profit pyramid. And in the past, I would say you want to aim for a minimum of 20% net profit, especially if you're in residential. In commercial, it might be 15% minimum. But this day and age, 25%, I believe, should be your new minimum. You ask me in 2 years, I may change it, but this is what I'm saying today. And then 30%, 35%, and then even 40%. And so how do you achieve these? You think about the size of work you're doing. So this might be for jobs that are a week or longer, let's say over 1 week. You know, that's not, I don't know if you can, how well you can see that. The red, is that red showing up there?
Not very well, no.
Not very well. That pen needs to go. All right, we're gonna try blue here. Over 1 week.
You would think we practice these things beforehand.
And then I would say here, something that's under 1 week, be charging a higher profit percent. And then under, let's say 2 days or 1 day, you know, somewhere between 1 and 2 days, you can go to 35%. And then if it's under a day, so let's say a half a day, you know, even to give a definition, something that's a half a day, you can charge 40% net profit. So you may set your budget up around this basic number down here, right, with like 25%. But then as you're actually pricing out the work, the shorter the work is, the higher the profit percent you want to charge. And you can do that if you have an expedient sales process. So if you're not slow and lethargic in your sales process, but rather if you're quick and exciting and quick turnarounds and keep the client in the emotional state, then you can make these higher margin sales that will make the clients happy, quite honestly. And so following this profit pyramid, by the way, it's really important. You can't just say, well, I'm going to budget for 15%, but we're going to work harder this year and we're going to make 20 or 25% net profit. It doesn't work that way. It may have worked once in your 20 years in business. I'm just picking a number and you remember that and you're thinking, oh, that's the strategy, but no, it doesn't work that way. You're always going to have problems in the year that are going to poke holes in your budget assumptions. So you have to have the smaller jobs in here that fill the pipeline of work with higher profit work so that it averages out down to whatever number you're aiming for down here in your budget. A lot of people don't like the real small work. Let's call these the enhancements. They're pains in the neck maybe, but if you are making really high margins, then you're going to love that work. So getting your sales team to follow this profit pyramid will have a big positive impact on improving profit, which is what you need to have a valuable business. So the second, I just got muted there. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
That was kind of weird.
Not sure. You should be good though.
All right. I'm just seeing if it has picked up my mic or not.
We can hear you.
Has not picked up my mic, but I guess it's going off my computer now. That's weird. All right. So the next thing I want you to think about, a lot of people think about revenue per hour. Can you read that, Tony? And
Yes, sir. We can see
a
it.
lot of people use it as, hey, this is my common metric to make sure I'm making enough money per hour. But the problem with revenue per hour is it can have a lot of costs built in. If you do a big design build job, for example, with low marked up materials, you'll have a high revenue per hour, but it's still not a high profit per hour. So I like to use throughput. Throughput is in effect revenue minus the cost of materials and subs. So it's a different kind of revenue minus the cost of materials and subs divided by the man hours or woman hours or people hours. And so it basically it's a way of saying gross profit per man hour, slightly different from that without getting into the details. This metric, throughput, is going to tell you how much profit you're making per man hour. And you can use this metric before a quote even goes out to a client. And basically what you're going to learn is high labor, low material, low sub jobs have a lower throughput, a lower profit per hour. And so you have to raise the prices up on those in order to kind of meet a minimum you want to meet. So if you use throughput and not revenue per man hour as a guiding force throughout the year, you're going to raise up profit, right? Profit happens with every job. So that's number two. That's the second tool I want you to think about. The third tool is what I call labor markup. And I'm going to be addressing some of this, by the way, in my financial masterclass, which I'm doing in January. Today's the final day to sign up for it. So I might even drop you guys a link if you're not signed up. I'm going to be sharing all these tools in super depth here. Labor markup. By the way, I have terrible handwriting. If you haven't noticed, yeah, welcome to my world here. When I was like in second grade, Tony, or third grade, I had to go to a special room a couple times a week and just practice on the whiteboard handwriting. It did not work.
Nice. Hey, Jeff, and before you move on to this next point, we had a good question from Pam Dooley here and wanting to know was what is a good throughput average?
Pam. So you should figure this out on your budget. So when you do a budget, let's say you've done a budget for 20% net profit or 25%. You're going to put in your assumptions for your labor subs, materials, your man hours, and you're going to come up with thank you for this question, by the way. You're going to come up with a average number. And when you have that average number, that benchmark, you're going to make sure that all your bids are at least going out the door with that, hitting at least that minimum average. And then anything, so here, I'm just going to work on the side here. So you got a range here, you got high, you got low, you got your average here, right? And so many of your jobs you'll be sending out the door above the average, but some of the jobs are going to come in below. And those are the jobs that you want to add more profit to get it up to that average. So you create your own through your budgeting process, and then you use it in the sales process. Does that make sense, Pam, Tony?
Makes sense to me.
Well, we'll have to come back to you, Pam, or you can text me at 3 a.m. like you sometimes do, and we can talk further about that.
I
So
might, Jeffrey, so be careful.
yeah, I know. Labor markup. What's the cost of labor? What's the cost of a man hour, a woman hour, a person hour? Let's say it's $20 before burden, including the overtime costs. What are you selling that for? That's the question. And what I like to do is follow the 3 times rule. I like to see at a minimum, you marking up your labor 3 times and using at a minimum, that being your sale price for your different work. There's always an exception, and we could, when I do the financial masterclass, I'll be diving into those exceptions. But
I dropped it the other day and it broke in half. So.
All right, we're gonna have to mute somebody there. There's always an exception, and like I said in the financial masterclass, I'll be diving more into that. But if you follow just this rule, you're golden, and you're gonna have a much better handle on how you price things. So these are 3 tools I wanted to dive into here, Tony, to help companies create higher profitability. And actually, I'm going to give you one more tool here. So if you're heavy maintenance and you're not doing a lot of big jobs, and then the one tool I would do for you is to take the 12 months of all the work you're going to do for a maintenance client, including the enhancements, the fertilizer, everything all in, and sort of do a separate P&L on that client, and make sure that while you may be making less money in one area, in total, that client is making you money. And so it's a bit burdensome, but it's not too hard to do over the winter. That's why I love the winter. And it's a way to assess your clients to make sure that each client is following the profitability budget and even the profit pyramid that you're setting up. So Tony, those are sort of 4 quick ways to think about growing profit, growing cash flow. Any questions you have on that?
Absolutely. No, I think that's all great stuff. There were a couple of questions and we'll hit them at the end, but we need to keep moving here to stay on time here. But we did, for those of you who want to dive deeper into this, we did share the sign up link for Jeffrey's masterclass that's going to be coming up. So you can follow that, get signed up for that as well. So let's move on to the next topic. A lot of great stuff and information going on here. The next one being that getting yourself out of the business, like the company can work without you. So tell us, Jeffrey, how to do that. And one thing I would be interested to know is what percentage of your clients that come to you that you're doing consulting for, how many of them actually have moved towards this? What percentage of people actually have this part down?
God, percentages. I'm going to have to pause and distract the audience for 2 minutes while I think about that. But I can give you case studies on the trends I see happening in that. How about that?
Yes, that sounds great.
First, some obstacles. What do I see as some of the obstacles? And you could probably name some yourself here. But some of the obstacles I see for clients, owners, contractors, just wrapping their head around it is, one of the obstacles is, but the clients love me. They bought me. I am their main point of contact. I'm the reason that they're working with our company. Now, that may not be true for all of you. Like I can see Pam here on screen, and that may have been true for her at one point, not necessarily true for her now, but many people have built a business where they're really see themselves as, I have to work with these X number of clients. And that's really a mindset issue. Well, it's a mindset issue and a real issue. The real issue is you better hire somebody who can do that job better than you. And it's a fallacy to think the owner does it best. No, not true. The owner may work the most hours, right? And work, weekends and disregard their own family to get work done. But that doesn't mean that the owner works the smartest or has the best skills or has the focus to do the best at handling key accounts. So the best way is hiring somebody better than you, that when you hand off to that client, they grab the client, they take care of the client, and you let them focus on that client. And that's all clients really care about. I mean, I'm a picky client here. I have my own landscape, and I just want answers. I don't care who I work with. Give me, I tell the owner this, give me somebody else that will just return my calls more promptly than you. Hope he's not listening. So it's a mindset issue. It's hiring somebody who's competent and doing a handoff. I mean, this might sound like first grade type advice here, but it's a big obstacle for a certain percentage of clients here. Let's say 20% of people online here. The other obstacle I see is where owners hate part of the business that they have. And so they almost don't want to even do that part of the business. They hate part of the business. They can't see how to get out of that part of the business, and or do that part of the business. They basically don't want to dedicate to that business. So it might be that they hate snow. It might be that they hate maintenance. It might be that, there's certain things that they're just not excited about. And again, this might be 101 for you, but hiring someone to do, to replace you in operations and also handle the things that you hate, I think is really kind of like a game changer for some people. They won't grow maintenance because they personally hate it, or they won't grow snow because they personally don't want to do it. But that's bad for the business. The business needs those things. The clients want those things, but the owner doesn't. And so you can get this business to work well without you in a healthy manner by hiring the right person. Brian Link, he's a client of mine. I don't know if you're on here, Brian. If you are, say hello. But he was going to get rid of his entire snow division because he just hated it. His company needed it. It needed the cash flow, et cetera. And so I helped him to hire an ops manager, and the whole peer group helped him. He's a member of one of my peer groups. And I'll just throw some numbers out. He was thinking of paying this ops manager, I don't know, 50 to 65, maybe 70. And I said, what would you pay if you got the right person in? Like really, that checked off all the boxes. And that's when his number of what he would pay grew from 55 to 60 to 65 to 70. And what would you pay if they would handle snow too? Well, I'll tell you what, he ended up hiring somebody for a lot more than I just told you, which is a lot for his size company. And this person's handling all the operations and all the snow. In fact, he took part of this person's compensation and tied it directly to snow. If you stay with me through snow and keep smiling and don't quit, you're going to get this sort of bonus just for handling that. And so there's always a solution to these obstacles. Another obstacle is where you feel like, well, what if I have to pick up the slack? Like I was talking with a client today where his one salesperson quit. And now he's really concerned about having to pick up the slack. And what I'm always telling people is to build teams. If you want the business to work without you, you've got to build teams. You can't just have one great salesperson, right? One great account manager. You've got to build teams of people in your company, which means you have to scale it to a certain extent in order for that business to work without you. And everybody should have a second in command so that if the operations manager leaves, there's one or two people underneath that could step up, right? If the salesperson leaves, or if a salesperson leaves, there's maybe somebody always in training that can step up into that sales team. So I'm a big believer of building the second in command at every level so that your company can handle these hiccups. There's always hiccups. The client I was speaking to today wanted to shoot himself, his main salesperson leaving. It's just like for him, it's just seeing everything he's worked on building sort of collapsing. But if he had been working on building in these redundancies and building a sales team, then you're like the captain on the boat, and the boat is on the waves, but you can handle it because you got a big enough boat with a, what do you call the thing that comes down that keeps the boat stable?
The keel.
Yeah, exactly. You live in Florida. You need to know these terms. So the key with all these is getting the right people in place in your company for the company to work without you. So back to your question, I have many clients who are bringing in a second in command to run their business. I think that's what you're asking me, right? How many are really going in that direction? And
Correct.
so I don't have a percentage, but I have more and more clients doing that. It seems to be a trend of the times, if you will. So I'll give you some examples. I have a brand new client that I will be coaching and mentoring. He might be on here. Smart guy, business is already working without him. The business is in Ohio, and he moved to Colorado because it's nicer in Colorado. It's probably the nicest state in the union if you think about four-season activities. And now he wants to, it's still working, but now he really wants to grow it. So I'm going to help him build the business so the team really runs the business without him. And he just forced it to happen. And by forcing it to happen, it's happening, right? In other words, he just pulled himself and his family out and said, all right, business, you're going to have to work without me. And it's working, but now he wants it to grow, work and grow and keep going. He had to get rid of a key person. That key person wasn't keeping the top spinning or the plate spinning. And so I'm going to work with him on that. I have another client who lives overseas. He's been on some of my webinars, Andy Blanchford. He used to live in Japan. Now he lives in Germany. And he's been a member of my peer group for a long time. And we just went to visit him in Montana, and he really has been mentoring and promoting his, you could call her the second in command in training, and she's taken over the ship. He flies in every now and then. He works on Zoom. It works. He made a decision. His wife is the real mocker in the family and has a great job working with the Army or somehow attached to the Army, working in Japan and Germany. And she was going, and he had a choice. Do I just stay and run my business, or do I go with and take the whole family? And so he made that leap, and it's working great.
Jeff, let me ask you a question here.
Yeah.
Of the clients that you have that have fully pulled themselves out of the day-to-day operations of the company,
Yeah.
what activities are they focusing on the most, right? Because those that are scaling to 8 figures up to 20 million, 30 million and beyond, what are those owners, maybe not always a CEO, but what are those owners doing on a day-to-day basis for the business, or maybe not even on a day-to-day business? What decisions are they making for the business? What does it look like for them?
Well, let me give 2 more examples because that will help answer your question. And then we'll come right back to your question. So the third example is George Tucker, where I held my Summer Growth Summit this past year. And he hired a CEO. He didn't even want to be the CEO. I don't want that job. He hired a COO and a CEO. And he wants to do 2 things. He wants to design, sell, just let me have fun on my residential projects. And he wants to go out and buy land and buy new businesses and grow the business. So he wants to work both way up here and down here, designing and selling. That's his happy spot. And that company, since he hired the CEO, is growing faster. Like the speed of growth has greatly increased. Think about Star Trek when it goes into warp speed and is light speed. I'm not sure, but that his business is really growing really, really fast since he's made that move. Another client of mine, Garrett, who really doesn't want to work in the business at all. He just wants to literally build the business, work on the business at a high level. And he wants to work in his real estate. And he's got some other investments. He invests into watches and cars and automobiles. And so he came to me both wanting to improve the financials and pull himself out of the business. And I identified somebody on his team, a young woman, marketing manager, not from our industry at all, not one iota of green thumb or concrete thumb or whatever you want to say. But she had the smarts and the ambition. And so we made her immediately chief of staff, which is think about the president has a chief of staff, they're not really in charge of anything, but they still have all the power. And so we made her chief of staff, and then we're going to move her into general manager as she keeps kind of proving herself. And so that he can, and he's going to work on the business at a really high level, basically shifting the business from towards swimming pools and away from maintenance. So think about maintenance and then design build and then swimming pools as an evolution. So to your question, Tony, it really depends on what the owner wants to do. I can still see Pam here. What does Pam want to do? Well, she's figuring that out, but it ain't always going to be landscaping. That much we know for sure. So go back to Andy Blanchford in Germany. He's working on high level decisions. He's mentoring the GM. He's involved in culture. Think about my client who lives in Colorado. He flies once a week into the company. I'm sorry, once a month into the company. And so he's going to work at the highest level, give the energy back to the employees, right? With his presence, kind of like the spark plugs, and be there for some key decisions, look at financial numbers once a month with his team. So everyone's going to do it a little different.
So that's great information. We got a couple more minutes, and we just got to move on to the next one. But I want to ask you real quick, can you dive in a little bit to building the team? Like, who do they need to, who should, how do you determine who to hire next, right? Who do you need to bring onto your team to move more in this direction? I know you did mention some things about ops managers and training a secondary person to be able to come up, but do you have any further insights for these people on here that are looking to build that team and get out? How can they do that? How should they take step one?
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the drawing board here. God, I love my flip chart. Soon I will have a digital one though, Pam. So then we'll have nice, pretty pictures that you'll be able to see more clearly on your screen. But for now, we're doing it this way. So you've got the owner, right? And the owner hires the general manager. That might be one title, or the COO. And I told you in George's case, it's actually the CEO, but however you want, whatever title you want to use here, right? Even if it's the general manager, below that, you still need a full functioning leadership team. And so the broadest brushstrokes is there's sales, there's operations, there's finance. A lot of people follow the book Traction, and Traction says this is the only org chart you need, and it's not the case. It's not the end point, it's the starting point for thinking about it. For example, if you're opening up a second branch, Tony, you might have that branch manager right here, and they might be on your leadership team, right? And so it really depends on how you're going to organize and structure and build your business. But in this case, if you're a smaller company, it might be a salesperson or two. If it's a bigger company, it might be a sales manager. Operations could be one person in charge of all operations, depending on how you're set up. Some companies will split up ops and maintenance. And so you'll have sort of a director of landscape and a director of maintenance. I'm working with a fine young man, Adam, in New York, running I guess it's about a $10 million business. And we're setting up the org chart for the future, how the business is going to look in 10 years. And I told him, hey, in 10, we'll probably get there in 5, but we'll call it the 10-year chart. And he's got an entire landscape division and an entire maintenance division. And so 2 different directors. Finance. Now, if you're a smaller company, finance people don't make good office managers. If you're a really large company, then the type of person can actually run the office and finances. So it sort of depends at the level you're at. But this is what you want to think about on your team. Everyone's going to do it a little bit different. Some owners will have, let's say you don't have a GM or any of that, and this is you, the owner, right? Let's just say you're in that box. Sometimes in a smaller company, you might have the mechanic there just because that person's reporting to you as the owner. So there's always exceptions, and you're always going to grow and change.
Right. Now that I just see a great question come in. So in 30 seconds or less, if you can answer this, do you have a specific ratio that you recommend for leaders to field workers? And that can vary obviously in sales and vary in your ops side, but is there a specific ratio, for example, one manager to every 3 or 4 field workers, or do you have a number for that?
Yeah, I love that question. I love benchmarks. Anybody who's worked with me knows that every 6 months, I'm coming up with another sort of benchmark to think about. And so this is one I've been really working on for the past 6 months at the Financial Masterclass. We're collecting this data from all participants. We have 182 people signed up for that, Tony. It's huge. And so we got all this data we're going to look at together. So I'm going to have a better answer for you after I collect all that data. But I've already been looking at this for the past 6 months with my clients. And so here's how I define it. I define it as people in the field by org chart position, full-time equivalent. But if you're a 9-month business, then 9 months is the full-time equivalent. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a northern company, it'll be a little bit different than a southern company. And then in the office, that's a general full-time equivalent, or anybody that's not literally in the field. So that's the ratios I use. And I really am seeing ranges from anywhere from 2 to 8. And 8 is way too lean and 2 is awfully fat. 2.5 is still fat, but if you're fast growing, you can rationalize it. And then 3, 4, 4.5 makes more sense. Maybe even 5. I see a lot of young companies at like 7. And it's like, you are too lean. You need to hire more people quickly. It's funny when you talk to a small company, they're like, oh, I can't afford it. No, you can't afford not to. You have to go there quickly and now. And I even see that with, I'm mentoring a guy who owns must be $6.5 million company, and he's missing 2 people, 2 big overheads. We just got one of them, hired a recruiter, brought that person in, and he needs 1 more. And when he does that, the whole organization is just going to jump up. So Tony, and what that means really is there's not one size fits all answer. You got to assess the organization, look at the ratio, and then say, if you change that ratio from here to here, your growth is going to bounce up and really accelerate.
This is exactly why hiring somebody like you as a consultant to look at a business on an individual basis is going to help these companies grow and understand what their particular case looks like. Because as you mentioned, it's going to be different for everybody. So if this is a pressing question, this is a good thing to get into with your consulting and coaching, is so that you can take an individual look at their business. All right, I love that. Let's go to the next section that you mentioned, which is one of my favorites that I'm looking forward to hearing the most about, which is growing in the resale value. For those of us in here that have a plan to exit their business one day, what is it that an investor is going to look like, or what somebody to purchase the business is going to look like? What makes that value? So I'm sure that's what a lot of people are looking for here. And by the way, I did see some other questions on the last topic. We'll get to those at the very end, but I want to make sure that we have time to stop here.
We're going to run out of time the way we're going. You already know that, don't you? That's the bad news. All right, let me talk. So the formula for the value of the business is EBITDA, earnings before depreciation, interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Just think of it as your earnings before depreciation normalized for what the owner may be pulling out that they don't need to be. So the value of a company is EBITDA divided by risk. So back to the flip chart. Good thing I bought new paper. I was not planning on using this much. So the value is EBITDA, let's see, EBITDA divided by risk. So the higher the EBITDA, the higher the profit and the cash flow of the business, the higher the value, and the lower the risk, the higher the value. That's really what it boils down to. And so you want a business that's consistently throwing off good profit. And by the way, consistency means you're lowering the risk. Yeah, we want it to be consistent. That means there's less risk. So consistently throwing off high profit and
and I know he heard me because he was
We
around,
got one.
you know, over, like we were here and he was like over at that end.
somebody
And I'm
must be
like-
out in the field.
Got him. We're good to go.
Yeah. So the value is the profit or the EBITDA divided by the risk. But there's one more thing that determines value, and that's the acceleration. So how fast and how strong is the company growing, right? Because if you're an investor, listen, everything you want to know about valuation, you learned at Shark Tank. They're always worried about the risk. They always want to see, is it making money? And they want to know how quickly it's growing. That's what gets their attention. And so we talked a lot about profit already, Tony. I don't really even need to go back into that. I kind of set the stage for that already. So let's talk about the different kinds of risk. Because
Absolutely. You're getting questions coming in about that. People want to know what risk is. What does
Well,
that mean?
I'll just give a couple examples. Tony, I bet you can give a couple too. Not only do I run peer groups, but Tony's in a peer group with advertising, advertising agencies,
Digital marketing agents.
marketing agencies from all over the country. And Tony's actually one of the tops in his entire peer group network. So Tony's the best of the best. I think it's pretty awesome. Tony actually got an award. He's probably going to be too humble to tell you that, but he got an award from his peer group network of marketing agencies for the work that he's done in the business he's built. So
We did. We were the fastest growing agency in our group.
There
So
you go.
that was a great award to win.
see, so that means you had this going for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just a real quick plug on peer groups. I will tell you guys, if you're not in a peer group, and Jeffrey runs one of the best peer groups in the industry, it completely changed my business. I know I don't run a landscaping business. I run a marketing agency for landscaping businesses, but it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Being able to have that network of people to bounce ideas off of, to have resources, to have all of that type of stuff, it was a game changer for me. I felt like I was at home when I joined a couple hundred other agencies that I was able to reach out to and connect with. So if you're not in a peer group where you can sit down with other business owners exactly like you on a consistent basis, highly recommend that you get into one. And Jeffrey runs one of the best ones in the industry.
Thank you so much. We definitely do the best benchmarking, bar none, because I love it so much.
Absolutely. So let's talk back about risk again. Let's go back into that. Let's go back to the flip chart you're getting ready to
Client
show.
risk is a big one. Are you dependent on one client, one builder for the bulk of your business? I won't mention his name. He's a longtime client. He's in Tennessee. He's been in one of my peer groups for years. And he came to the peer group with one big builder, and he couldn't get away from that builder because that builder was growing. Whenever he grew the other part of his business, the builder part grew from that one builder. He could not. And so he physically, intentionally, gut-wrenchingly had to tamp down that part of the business and grow other parts of the business. And I'm going to tell you, his profitability actually has totally pivoted from doing okay to having stupendous profits. And this is a mostly commercial. I think he does some residential, great profitability with the turnaround, because he dealt with that client risk of over dependence on one client. So that's one. The other risk is people risk. Don't depend on one employee. I told you about my client who lost his one salesperson. If I'm going to buy your business, I want to know that you have sales teams, operational teams. I don't think you'll have an admin team, that goes without saying, that you have some second in commands built up so that there's people always being grown up through the pipeline. I want to know that the company doesn't depend on you. You like how big the finger gets, right? That's what I want to know, that it doesn't depend on you as the owner, that you have removed yourself. So people risk, very big one. Product risk. If you're all design build or all install or all builder work, it might be a great business that throws off cash flow. Remember I said there's different kinds of value to a business. So it might throw off a lot of cash flow, but it may not be saleable. And so you have product risk from that perspective. If you don't have enough recurring revenue, and that's true whether you're commercial or residential. Just being diversified to an extent helps you with product risk, not just doing one kind of service, but doing a few different services. Now, I will tell you, when you diversify, we have to go back to the flip chart here. I'm big into investing. I talk to my financial planner all the time. I think if I went back and was born again, I might come back as a financial advisor in one of those lives. And so if you diversify, let's say you've got a pot of investments, right? All these different investments, you've diversified. So when you diversify out of just one investment into 5 or 6 investments, you're going to average out the returns and losses. So it'll be a steadier return, but chances are it won't be as high. So when you diversify, you trade off some profitability for steadier returns. And so what I'm saying is, by diversifying from one product or service to a couple different ones, makes the business more stable, more consistent, but it can also lower the profitability of the firm. That's sort of inherent in diversification. Number 4 is economic risk, right? Are you just killing it when the economy is going up, but when the economy hiccups, does your business hiccup? That could be true for install. That could be true for only doing builder work. That could be true for only doing work that does well in a good economy. That could be true for selling into a certain geography that only does well when the economy is doing well. So economic risk. There could be disruption risk. You know, you're doing only a kind of work where legislation is coming down the pipeline in your state that may change the game. You may be renting a facility where you could be kicked out at any moment. And so you have that disruption risk from the physical plant where you're sitting, different kinds of disruption risk. There could be municipality changes coming to play that create disruption. So those are 5 kinds of risk. Tony, what have you seen? What other kinds of risk have you been thinking about?
So some of the risks that we see coming in with clients is a couple of different things. I would say one of them was what you said, actually, one of your very first one, your client risk, where you've got a couple of major projects that are making up the bulk of your revenue. So for example, we may work with a client that is doing a couple $1 million in revenue, but they had a few $400,000 or $500,000 design, build, install projects that happened in that year, which made up a big portion of their revenue. And if they don't secure projects like that again in the upcoming year, the revenue is going to fall significantly, especially if we see them doing some of the larger commercial type work. So I would say that that's definitely one of the bigger types of risks that we see. One of the other types of that I would say risks that we see from many of our customers coming in is not maximizing their customer base that they currently have, right? That's a lot of low-hanging fruit that they are just not taking advantage of, and being able to maximize that customer base would actually enable them to bring on additional revenue that's going to be more secured if they do have a large customer base. So there are various types of risks that we see, but I would say the number one would be the one that you mentioned first, which is that client risk. Also the people risk, that's huge. We see people coming to us that are missing key aspects of their employment team, more importantly, their leadership team. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, is to discuss what it is that creates a valuable business, because even a lot of the companies that we work with that are at 8 figures and more, there's still a lot of owner involvement where they're still working with a lot of the things that they shouldn't be working with on the day-to-day business. So, and that really usually comes down to they don't have the leadership in place that they really need to, right? And it's not uncommon at all to see a $4 or $5 million a year company where that owner is ops manager, that owner is sales, that owner is designer. We have several of them where that one person is doing all of those jobs. So I hope some of them are on here and listening to what you have to say here, because those are real issues that when you try to sell the company, that person buying the company is not going to want to take those jobs over, right? They're going to have to hire and replace for those jobs. So those are some of the risks that we see. Before we move on from here, I know we only have a couple minutes left.
Well, I have a couple points I want to toss in here.
Sure.
So in the last couple of years, there has been a push for commercial maintenance companies to get like 3-year contracts to reduce the risk, right? 3-year contract, the client can easily leave, locks them in, the business is more valuable. But now we have inflation risk, we have economic risk. And if you're sitting on a 3-year contract, you might be in trouble. So you've got to keep your eyes on a swivel, right? Or your head on a swivel, always understanding where the winds are coming from and what's happening. And this risk reduction strategy could kill you, depending on how you respond and react and how your clients react to it. So, that's why it's called business. It's not easy. You can't just set it and forget it. The other thing I wanted to say is this whole growth thing here, this growth trajectory, the way you're going to be fast growing is in what I call scaling, right? Your ability to scale really is going to have a lot to do with how you've systematized your business, simplified your business, and focused your business. So it's the opposite, by the way, of diversification. Diversification reduces risk, but focusing in your business where you can scale it really drives the value. So they're a little bit at odds with each other, but I would say I would rather have the focused in scalable business versus the overly diversified business that has taken out too much risk. Risk that you understand and can manage in your own business and can scale is really the best kind of risk.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you there, Jeffrey, 100%. Now, I don't think we're gonna have time to hit the fourth one because I want to ask you one more point that I think a lot of people are wondering about here, especially those with exit strategies, is how do you exit? When is the right time to exit? How do you structure that deal? I know that you've been involved in a lot of these types of deals. You yourself have actually been involved in a deal with your own company. So tell us when, okay, now we've built our landscape companies to the point where we're ready to start exiting the company. How do we do that? What is the first steps? What should we expect in that process? Tell us a little bit about that, because I know a lot of people are going to want to know that. Yeah, let me get somebody here that's on the chat. Got it.
Luckily, when they chat, they come really up close and you can hit mute right away. I've been hitting some of them as we've been going on here. So thank you for leaving me a minute and a half for that final question. It's such a simple question. That's all I need.
Sorry, I can go a little bit extra if other people can as well. This is a good point to hit here.
Listen, two things. You want to be thinking at least 10 years ahead of time. Yep. Both unmuting there? Okay. You want to be thinking 10 years ahead of time on that. If you're thinking you want to exit when you're 45 and you're 35, you should start that plan right now. There is a lot to get in line. If you think you want to exit in 5 years, you better start planning right now. I was talking to my brother about this, and I can't give away confidences, but he was telling me when he was thinking of exiting, and my feedback was, if that's the case, you better start thinking about it today, tomorrow. He was getting on an airplane. I'm like, when you get off that airplane, you better start the plan. And so 10 years out, that's the best time. The next best time is right now. Now, if somebody comes to you with a great offer, now might be the time to take advantage of it. You might be thinking 5 years out, and somebody comes to you with an offer that, you don't think that you're going to be able to repeat that offer. then now's the right time. But how do you get ready for that lucky strike? Hopefully 4 years ago, you got all your financials in line and figured out so that your year over year financials are clean and easy to read and understand. So a buyer could come in and say, yep, oh, I see exactly what you've been doing. And so the big picture, Tony, is you should start thinking about it today, no matter how far out in the future you want to exit. Somebody was talking to me about working with them, and they gave me such a fuzzy timeline. They never want to exit. The person was like 60 years old, or 65 even. And I don't even think I wanted to take their money or take them on as a client, because it was just unrealistic, where someone says, no, we'll put that decision off to the future. Let's work on these things here now. You don't have to leave tomorrow, but you should start putting the plans in place today, that if that lucky strike came, you could, if something bad happened, you could, and get ready to make the exit. And you realize the team you have isn't the team that will take you there. So then, why do you need 10 years? Well, you can go down, you can get to the altar with one team and realize, oh, that team's it's not going to work. Once I've gotten my plans really fleshed out, let me get a different team or person in place. So there's a certain amount of trial and error that happens with that. And you don't know what you don't know until you start going down that path.
Absolutely. And so how do you sell it? Tell us about that real quick. Do you go to a business broker? Is that what you would recommend? Do you recommend connecting with people in the industry? How do you recommend actually making that move?
Listen, there's different ways to do it. So I can't just say, hey, here's the only one way. Some people want to go to a broker and get rid of it and move on. I've got a client who's making a generational shift in what he's all about, what kind of business he wants to be in. He's going to shift more into real estate. And there's a big backstory to it. He wants to get out now. He's going to get a broker. He's going to make the move. Boom. He's made the switch. Others may want to sell to their leadership team so they can pull out slowly and be involved in the business on a sort of offhand way, where the business really does work without them, and they can start to do other things but still collect a check. Others may find that they can't sell the business on the open market. If it's more design build, it might be more valuable to sell it to an employee. Others might be thinking about, I have a 25-year-old, will that son or daughter be ready to take it over in 5 or 10 years? I need to sort of play both strategies and get the business ready to sell to either. So it's a case-by-case basis, Tony, but those are some ways to think about it.
Those are some great insights. I love it. Some of those I didn't even think about there. So I really like that idea. Well, we are out of time. We didn't get to finish our last point, which happened to us last year, but hey, that's okay. A couple of things here. We did just share a link to Jeffrey Scott's peer groups. So if you are interested in joining a peer group, I saw several of you commenting that you would be interested in a peer group. 100%. I highly, highly recommend it. It changed my life completely, joining a peer group. It's what helped me scale to the multi-million figures in our agency. And it is what every one of you will get benefit from. I don't care how large you are, you will gain benefit from a peer group. So I highly recommend that you follow that link and at least talk to Jeffrey and his team, find out about what it's like, and at least get some insights to it. Don't just write it off. So if you're not in a peer group, you really are not doing yourselves any favors by not being part of this. So before we finish up here, I would like to open up the floor for some questions. I know that there was a couple
Tony,
of questions. Jeff, looks like you got some.
I have some gems I want to leave the audience with here.
That's right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Let me go through them really quick. So 5 or 6 gems to think about. Hire for the future. If you're about to hire a key position, ops manager, what have you, think at least 3 years out how you're going to grow, and hire someone to fill that position, not this position. Hire for the future and you'll get to the future. Hire only for today and you might get stuck in the today. So that's number one. Number two, stop thinking I can't afford to do X, Y, Z. I can't afford to join a peer group. I can't afford to hire another salesperson. Start thinking about investments that pay off in 1 year. If I make this investment, can I get a payoff in 1 year? In which case it's just an expense and it's a great ROI. So remove I can't afford out of my lingo. And, if you dream it, you can build it. If you build it, they will come. That is the reality. That's number two. Number three, stop thinking that I can't hire anyone better or I can't find anyone. All my clients are overcoming the hiring dilemma, all of them. And it's not easy, but it's not impossible. There are so many ways looking outside the industry. More and more of my clients are hiring that way, looking for different ways to do online recruiting. And I won't give you all my secrets, but there's a lot of new ways out there that aren't just LinkedIn, where you can do online recruiting. Hiring a headhunter to bring in somebody for a key position, or even hiring a professional recruiter, different from a headhunter. They basically do all the recruiting for you and you pay them less. And they kind of do it as if you had a recruiter in-house. I ran a podcast just recently on two of my clients that have brought in recruiters in-house. Listen to my podcasts. They're free, a lot of great people there, and you can learn about that. So you can definitely find the people you need. There are strategies that work. That's number three. Number four, residential is the new commercial. There's now private equity coming in, buying up residential companies. For years, they said it would only be commercial. Now it's also residential. So don't give up on your dream. Don't think you have to shift to commercial just to have a bountiful exit. That's number four. Number five, even design build is shifting from no value to some value in the sale. So you don't have to just give it up. Rather, you have to integrate it into the whole package of what your business is. And lastly, there will be some businesses for sale next year because their PPP money ran out. Some people took the PPP money and transformed the business, came out stronger. Others just sucked up that money, didn't fix their problems, and they're going to be in trouble a year from now. And if you're in the business of buying businesses, you're going to see more businesses for sale there. If that is the situation you're in and you want to keep your business, reach out for help. It's never too late, but I will say that there's going to be some, there's going to be some opportunity from that dislocation that's going to happen once PPP money runs out.
Absolutely. Those are great points, Jeff. Great points there. Actually, in fact, a lot of the value right there in this webinar was just from those 5 points right there. So I hope a lot of people stuck around for those. Now, before we get into follow-up questions, we did make it easy for you guys to set up consultations with myself or with Jeffrey Scott, so you can learn more about his consulting, learn more about his peer groups, and also get a copy of this webinar. This has been recorded, so you can get a copy of it, go back through it later on. All you have to do is go to lawnline.marketing/get-webinar. We're going to drop a link here into the chat for that. Just follow there. If you're interested in speaking with Jeff, just check off his option on there, and he will get a copy of it, letting him know that you're interested, and him and his team will follow up with you guys. Same thing for us. If you're interested in talking to us about marketing, just check our box there and we will follow up with you as well. Now, we have some time that we have available here for some discussion and some chats. And the way we like to make this work is, think of if you have a question, make it concise. Jeffrey will try to answer it in a concise manner. And we want to get to a couple of different people here. If you do have a question, we want you to hit the raise your hand option. There is an option on here to raise your hand, or you can also put it into the chat and we will spotlight you. We want you to unmute and ask your question to Jeffrey. He will respond back to you. And I would recommend those of you that have a good question, take advantage of this. People pay this man lots and lots of money to tell them how to run his business, and you're getting an opportunity to ask him a question for free. So make sure your question is applicable to other people. But I think this would be a great time to go ahead and open up the floor for a couple questions. I know there was a few questions that we didn't get answered, so I will highlight if somebody is still on here. Heather Quartercracks, I think I saw you had a question earlier that didn't get answered. So do you want to go ahead and ask that now? She's still on here.
She is.
Yep, sorry, I just raised my hand.
All
I was
right,
trying
let's
to
go
follow
ahead.
the rules.
Oh, that's
I had
okay.
two questions, so I'm not sure which to add first. So the one that I put in the discussion, you had mentioned something about, and it happened so fast that I couldn't quite hold on to it. Jeff, when you were talking about the no value versus value, something about design, or it was in one of your last segments, and it just happened so fast, and you were talking about how, talking about residential specifically, and how don't rule it out.
Oh, well, I was just saying, I think I said a lot. So, but residential used to be ruled out as valuable, basically. People won't buy residential companies, but that is not true any longer. I predicted that for years and it's come true, right? And once private equity figured out the landscape world and basically bought up many of the commercial, they're now turning towards residential companies and seeing that, in fact, residential has a lot of value.
Okay, I would agree then.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question? Well, I still have my hand raised. Wait, I think I
quick.
can put it down. So something that's come up, not just in this webinar, but a number of other ones that I've been a part of, or I've been able to be a part of, is there is, and you touched, both of you, I think, touched base on this, the power and the empowerment that's found in peer groups. And I feel very blessed and lucky to be in Ontario, where we have Landscape Ontario.
Mhm.
So through Landscape Ontario, they pretty much handed us, here's a peer group that you can join for free. And we didn't have to search very hard as owners. But for many others on this webinar and others, how do people find peer groups? So Jeff, I know that you've got a peer group and I don't qualify for it yet, but one day I will. It's one of my
You ne-
benchmarks.
You never know. You email me and let's find out. By the way,
No, I'm under 1 million. So
well, if you're close to it, I have a new group.
not close to it.
Not
I'm
even
about a
close.
third of the way there. I'm getting, well, more than a third of the way there.
So you have in Landscape Ontario, which is an awesome association. By the way, it's the biggest on the continent. I just want to say that. And
I'm
probably,
so lucky.
and probably the best organized. And so you have what's called peer-to-peer. I have a lot of Canadians in my peer group. So I don't think it's an either or. I think the
Yeah.
peer-to-peer is good for just local networking. But when you want to really get honest and get outside your bubble, that's when you would, come to me and get in more of an international peer group.
Right. So, and you're providing one option, but I'm just wondering, is there an easy way for people to search? So aside from yours, because
Is this like a
yours looks
setup
amazing.
question? Is somebody paying you to ask?
No, absolutely not. I wish I was a part of your peer group.
Listen,
Honestly, if you guys haven't
I would
checked it
say
out.
since I'm here, talk to me. If you like what I have to say, great. And if not, you'll just keep searching. It's called the internet. I'm sure there are ways for other people to keep looking.
Oh, okay.
There are no better
Gotcha.
ones
Thank you.
than Jeff's peer group. So, all right, next let's actually bring on Heather Quartercracks. That actually was not Heather Quartercracks, but let's go ahead and bring Heather on. Heather, you have a question here for Jeff. Let's ask it.
Hi, Jeff. I was just wondering, at what point do you recommend we switch from having operations that covers all the areas to a maintenance operations and then a landscape operations? We're kind of stuck right now having one person with too much responsibility, I think.
Well, tell me a little bit more about it. What's the revenue? What's the niche?
Our revenue right now is almost 3 million. And so we do really high-end design build. We're not into a huge market as far as enhancements yet. And our maintenance a lot of times is for those design build clients. So we're kind of backwards. We don't get the maintenance and then landscaping. We get the big landscaping job and then do the maintenance for
That's
those
not backwards.
folks.
That's awesome.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, so you're doing this custom work. The ops manager is dealing with a lot of detail. And then you've got
Yeah.
this maintenance, which, is a whole different animal. And so
Mhm.
I think the key is, do you have somebody that could be a maintenance director?
that's where we're struggling to find is we have one person who's really good at
Yeah.
that part, but finding the maintenance person, we're struggling to find somebody.
I would start looking, and it was hard
Okay.
last year. I work with a recruiting company, and that was the most often requested position that they had the most trouble filling. So
Okay.
it's sort of interesting that, and here's another person, you, who wants it. But perseverance always wins out. Creativity and perseverance in recruiting, and so I would keep looking.
Okay.
You're either going to find somebody who's done it for another company and wants to leave that company and come help you do the same. So they've already done it. They want to do it again. You might find somebody younger who was an account manager, but really has all these other skills, or they were a field manager, but it has all these other skills. In your situation, I would definitely want somebody dedicated to the maintenance side, because that's also where the enhancements can come from.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, up next, we're going to add on, let's add on Derek.
Hey, Jeffrey, thank you for your time today. I wonder if you have, since you're working with a lot of different companies, if you could speak to the electrification of the market, things like California that's doing bans on different things, having some bans, about opportunities and challenges of the electrification of our industry.
You know, just look at the automobile industry and GM and other companies declaring that they're going to be fully electric, which is hard to believe, but they're going there. Some of the big players are going there. Even Porsche, which is one of my top two favorite brands, is declaring that they're going electric. I don't quite believe it all, but it's a huge commitment they're making. And so I think as landscape companies, we just have to see the future coming, whether it's robotics or electric equipment, and go there now. Don't wait to be pushed there, but be on the leading edge. You don't have to be on the bleeding edge, right? But be on the leading edge of these changes. Don't wait for your state to make changes. There's more and more acceptance of electrical. Some companies even, some clients even see it as an advantage in certain communities. Just like you said, the legislation will be changing quickly, where it'll become more of a must, especially if you want to get out there early. So I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but I would just embrace it. Embrace it. Don't be in the bleeding edge, but be that next edge right behind that.
Quick follow-up question. Thoughts on these guys, robot mowers? I know Pam Dooley, we met her, she's kind of on your thoughts in the market.
I did not, you were going in and out.
What's your thoughts on the electric mower market?
I think
Yeah.
I just answered it, which is experiment, be on the leading edge, don't overcommit. So let me be more specific. Don't overcommit. Don't be in the bleeding edge where you've overcommitted to a technology that you can't, come back from, because the technology is gonna, they're gonna change up, I think, over the next few years, and who seems to be leading today may not be leading in the future. So that's why I'm saying bleeding edge versus leading edge, but you should definitely be experimenting with it today.
I think you sent that to you all. I don't see it.
Perfect, great response. Next up on deck is going to be Richard McCoy. So let's go ahead and bring Richard up and see what he's got to ask here.
Hey, Jeffrey, Tony, appreciate you guys' time today. Just real quick about the electric mowers. We've been using electric mowers for 2 years now. We got some ride-ons and some other type of electric. We have solar panels on trailers and stuff like that. So we're grabbing the bull by the horns and going for it. So, but my question anyway is about exit strategies. What's your opinion of, and I put it in the chat, but I figured I'd pop up here. So your opinion of exit strategy to employees, and I know there's multiple strategies to go about that. What would be like a top 1 or 2 ways that you might tackle that monster?
Well, I have a few clients doing ESOPs. Those are coming back in. They're definitely complex and not for everybody, but there's a lot of people out there that understand them. So that is one way to go about it. The other way is to build a small team of employees that want to buy the business, either a single person or a couple people. And you have to figure out how they're going to finance it. And that's, a whole long discussion there. And you have to figure out how the governance, will the team make decisions, or will there be what is the term? The leader of equals that gets the overriding decision. And so figuring out not only how they can afford it, but the governance aspect, I think, is going to be very important.
So if I could just follow up then with the affordability, would it be a way to sell shares to the employees moving forward? Like, over the next couple of years, like if you're talking about a 10-year exit, over the next couple of years, selling shares to the employees so they have some equity in the company as a way to have value in the company, to be able to make it easier to get a loan?
Well, that's a way for them to start building up some equity so that they can borrow less. And I don't know exactly what the amount is with all the different loan mechanisms, but obviously it's a lot harder to borrow 100% than it is 70% in terms of getting their buy-in. You have to have the buy sells written in a way that doesn't burn you if it sort of collapses. And all of a sudden you got to buy them out and you can't afford it, et cetera. So, but in general, I like the idea. You just have to do the right mechanisms with the right intention in mind.
Yeah, nuance, right? A lot of nuance.
Yeah,
Some great question there.
a lot of fine print, Richard.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, great question on selling to the employees. All right, next we're going to bring up Mike Lucas here. Mike has a question for Jeffrey as well. Let's bring him up. We'll have 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll call it a day.
All right. Hey there, Jeffrey. Mike here.
Hey, Mike.
I work for Lotus Gardenscapes in Dexter, Michigan. I think we may have something of a relationship with you already, but I'm new to the team. We're looking to expand our PHC program in general, so plant healthcare. So we're looking for value-added products. We do a number of deep root fertilization, some pesticide application, a number of those things, but I'm really being looked to spearhead this project. We have like maybe 5 products in our arsenal right now, including deer repellents and things. So really, I'm kind of just looking for some advice for a company that's looking to add value in terms of product. Do you have any good places to start? Any books, any materials to kind of round out our repertoire of what's available and what we'd like to offer?
So I do know your company. You're in one of my peer groups. You guys are doing an awesome job also with employee buyouts, right?
Yep.
You're doing
Starting
a lot of
ESOP on the first, so that's exciting.
right. You're doing the ESOP. So 1, your owner can put that question into the peer group. Number 2, you should type it into the chat right now before we hang up, or we'll just put the question out there. Are there people out there that have resources that Mike can make use of as he expands his PHC program? And number 3, I would go to your vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a number of pesticides. I think that's kind of the bread and butter of what we offer in terms of like value added products. I'm just getting started there, but I work as a horticulture foreman. So really the products that we're offering that we can bring to the site are very minimal in general. So like I said, repellents, compost based fertilizers, things of that nature. So I'm kind of familiar with the products, but I guess, yeah, vendor relations, finding a way to bring that into the large scale instead of just purchasing here and there.
And also go to, if there's a local ag school or schools that prepare for the pesticide licensing, you should find some resources there.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, perfect. Next up, we have Scott Lehman. Scott has a question here for Jeff. Let's see what he's got.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, good afternoon, Jeff. So full disclosure for everybody listening, I have spoken to Jeffrey a few times about consulting, peer group, and I was also blessed to go to the Summer Growth Summit. And I've heard from everybody, employees and family members. I was a different person after that event. So thank you for that.
Wow.
So Jeffrey, I was actually going to email you today, but I might as well ask for the benefit of everybody else. So I'm thinking the cart before the horse, or I'm not sure which way to go. Would you suggest as we grow in this industry to join a peer group first, or to engage in a full-blown consulting agreement or arrangement?
No, that's a great question. So A, it depends on the size and affordability. Affordability is based on size, but size also means how much can you implement quickly. So it depends on that, and it depends on how badly you need help, right? Can I go to the, do I need to go to the hospital, or can I go to the, what do you call it, the local outpatient? Yeah. And so it's kind of like maintenance and design build. You can start from maintenance, the peer group, and then go to design build consulting, or you can start with design build and then go to maintenance. And so, and I have clients that have done both. So there's not just one way. So it's really going to come down to, so it's going to come down to your size and the urgency. At your size, you might start with the peer group, get some traction, improve some profitability, and then build some trust. And then from that, switch over to the full-blown consulting and coaching.
That's great. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Good question. And I think we had Eric Copel that was asking how to raise your hand. If you have a question there, come on in here, start your video, unmute, and we'll spotlight you so that you can ask your question here to Jeffrey. Are you still on here, Eric?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. I don't think we can see you though.
I opened my video. I'm here.
Okay, let's get you spotlighted here real quick. There we go. Gotcha.
Okay. So we've been pursued by numerous private equity groups. We don't have a for sale sign on our business. When we went into business 6 years ago, we've grown our business from 0 to 13 million a year. We're entertaining. Our exit strategy was probably 3 to 5 years from now, but my question is, how do you determine valuation in our industry? We're a Florida-based company, and it's all over the place. You could say 4 times, 10 times. What are you seeing in the industry at this time?
Well, are you asking me for what reason? Are you asking me because when you sit down with them, you want to already know what it should be? Or are you asking because you don't even know if you should sell?
I'm very ambivalent. Just turned 60 years old, not quite ready to retire, but there's always a right number for everybody. And then you can move on to different ventures.
What's your right number, Eric?
I'll keep that confidential here.
Wait, are they on
in public? But I'm curious to what you guys feel are multiples of an EBITDA number. What are you seeing in the industry?
So what services are you doing?
We're a full service company. We're doing lawn care maintenance. We have contract work. We do installations, renovations. We do pools. We do everything. We have subs that pull permits. We do everything we need to do to support an elite clientele here in Florida, South Florida.
Are you in Southwest Florida?
East.
Southeast. You know, I think you're going to see generally multiples of 3 to 5, 4 to 5. In the hot markets, they go higher than that. And in large companies, they go higher than that.
Right.
So it depends on the mix of services, recurring versus install. You know, Florida's known for being hot and then being less hot. So you could get with your accountant and have them do some back of the napkins valuations for you. Or there's also green industry valuators, and they have a formal process, but there's 2 levels of valuation. There's the less expensive back of the napkin and the more expensive using it to make the transaction. So you can do some research that you can keep quiet.
Okay. This was interested in your take on it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question. I actually saw somebody else that asked that same question on what they're seeing or what you're seeing as multipliers. So just to clarify, it's going to change through the various industries and locations, but 3 to 5 times is something that you've seen.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of 5s and even higher now because just the market is so hot.
Right. And when you say 3 to 5 times, can you clarify you're seeing 3 to 5 times profit or 3 to 5 times your top line revenue?
EBITDA.
What are you referring to there? EBITDA. Yep. Gotcha.
EBITDA. So
right.
Like I said, there's definitely, you know, if you're fast growth, full maintenance, low risk, bigger platform, people are going to pay a lot more. So if you're really small, you might be surprised you might not even get one if you're just selling a small book of business. And so the size and platform that you can provide to the buyer also has an impact on the valuation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any other questions that anybody wants to ask before we wrap this up here? We've got about 30 minutes over and we need to let Jeffrey get back to what he does. So is there any last questions before we wrap this up again? Zach, if you wouldn't mind share the link to where people can get a rerun of this webinar and where they can also reach out to Jeffrey to inquire about his peer groups or coaching or consulting, or reach out to us to schedule a consultation. I am not seeing anybody else coming in here or raising their hands. So I would say that that's going to be a wrap for this year's webinar. Hopefully next year, Jeffrey and I will come back together again. I think this will be a very successful, or has been a very successful webinar. I hope everybody has learned from it. Jeffrey, is there anything that you want to add here before we sign off and call it a day?
There is. As owners and leaders, we very rarely get told, hey, you did a good job. You know, it's our job to tell everybody else that they've done a good job. So hopefully you all can take some time over the holidays and just pat yourself on the back, you know, and absorb the good job you have done. A lot of entrepreneurs are driven and they're actually never satisfied. That's useful until it's not useful, right? And so take time to reflect on everything good that you've done and how you've helped your community and your employees, and have a bit of satisfaction in your life before you take off to start achieving next year's goals.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. This is a great way to end the webinar / discussion. I hope you guys found this discussion being a little bit more a little bit more fun, right? That people were able to be spotlighted and actually talk one-on-one with us. I think it's something that I'll look more into doing in the future. This is actually the very first time that we've had cameras and microphones enabled. I think it worked really well and it allowed people to get their questions answered and engage with us. So again, thanks everybody for coming into here. We had a lot of great people on this webinar. I hope everybody learned a lot. Again, go to lawnline.marketing/get webinar. Request a copy of this so that you have it. You can refer back to it. Jeffrey Scott dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on this event here, so you definitely don't want to lose them. And if you're interested in talking to either of us about the services we offer, let us know on that form too, and we will make sure that we reach out to you. Have a happy holiday. Have a great 2022 season, and I look forward to seeing everybody grow. Jeffrey Scott, thank you for being on here again this year. It was amazing. You are awesome.
Thanks, Tony. Same, right back at you.
All righty.